Hey guys, it's Holly here and I'm giving you 10 tips for real world weight loss. Tip number 1, keep your house stocked with whole foods that are minimally refined. These types of foods are much easier to overeat on, so work out what these foods are for you and keep them to a minimum. As a general rule, the less refined, the more satiating those foods are, and this is because they're higher in dietary fiber. Tip number 2, minimize foods that you overeat on and keep them out of the house. Make them harder to access. Set up some forms of restraint. If you have to get in the car to go out and access those foods, you might start to think twice about actually consuming them. And this extends to things like liquids as well. They're much easier and far more calorie dense and you can easily overconsume on them. So things like juice, alcohol, soft drinks, these things are really easy to overconsume, so be judicious with these choices. Tip number 3, if you're eating out or eating restaurant foods, don't arrive ravenous. The restaurant versions of the foods that you eat out almost have double the calories, if not more, than the same version of that food that you make at home. Make sure that you have a plan if you're eating out. There's probably a lot of foods that you would like to be able to eat, but perhaps they don't fit your macro budget. So make sure that when you're eating out, you've set yourself up for the day to make sure that you don't exceed your dietary targets. Tip number 4, if you've been dieting for a while and you've reached a plateau, so by that I mean 2 to 3 weeks without any progress, decide whether it's realistic for you to actually continue dieting. If you want to keep dieting, there's a couple of things that you can do. The first thing is to cut back on your carbohydrates and fats, or you might like to do both, add physical activity. Tip number 5, if you have stagnated, you might actually be tracking incorrectly. So make sure you re-examine how you're calculating your macros to make sure that you're not actually overeating. It's really common to underestimate the weight of the foods that you're consuming, especially if you're not tracking them regularly with the scale. The other thing is to make sure you're tracking the snacks and all the bites of things that you take, because these quickly add up. Be honest with yourself and make sure that you are tracking correctly. Tip number 6, give yourself a small allotment of an indulgence food, and I would recommend somewhere between 10 to 20% of your total daily calorie intakes. It's okay to go cold turkey, but it's not absolutely necessary. At the end of the day, adherence to the diet is what makes it successful, so perhaps allowing something small, a small indulgence perhaps, might make the difference of you being successful or failing in the diet altogether. Sometimes striving for perfection can backfire for many of us, so try to include something small frequently to help you stick to your goal. Tip number 7, make sure that your goal is realistic. Around 2 to 4% of your total body weight per month is a really good rate of loss. As we progress through a diet, often the weight loss becomes slower and the scales actually become a less useful tool. Instead, you can use things like visual clues, how your clothes are fitting, if you don't have access to an accurate method of measuring your body fat percentage. Tip number 8, diet breaks. These are a great tool to help keep up your compliance. Diet breaks are excellent for helping to reduce the amount of lean body mass we lose during a diet, as well as mitigate some of the metabolic adaptations that can take place if we're in a diet for too long. Tip number 9, time frames. Make sure you have a set out, planned time to diet. I would recommend somewhere between 16 to 20 weeks to make sure that you are motivated to get to your end point. However, if you're not on a tight time frame, I would absolutely recommend putting in a diet break, as this can assist your progress overall. And finally, tip number 10, if you're having trouble with your diet and you feel like you can't make progress on your own, get a coach, get someone to help you be accountable. Alright guys, so that's it. That is my 10 tips for real world weight loss. If you like this video, please remember to like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.